In this video, I'll be comparing the Sig Sauer Mark 25 versus the West German P226. The purpose isn't to try to find out which one is better. I'm just going to be pointing out a few differences and similarities between the two. Later on in the video, I'll do a shooting comparison. Starting from this angle, you can see that the front of the trigger guard is serrated on both models. The front straps also share the same type of design. They have the same flathead screws on the grips, the same takedown lever. I'll show a better view of it later, but they also have the same slide serrations. I never noticed until I was taking these photographs, but they have different mag release buttons. The West German model has somewhat horizontal lines, and the Mark 25 has more of a grid pattern. When comparing the decocking levers, you'll see that the Mark 25 extends a little bit further down, and it's a little bit shorter when looking at it lengthwise from left to right. If you take a look at the West German model, you'll see that those horizontal lines are just a little bit longer. The side profiles of both triggers look about the same, but if you take a closer look at the West German model, you'll see that the face of the trigger is serrated and the Mark 25 is not. Both of these models have the original factory grips. There's no branding or logos on the West German grips, and the Mark 25 has the newer style Sig Sauer grips marked P226. The West German model has a crisscross type stipple pattern, and the Mark 25 has a bumpy pebble type pattern. Both grips are polymer, but the West German model feels just a tad thinner, but they both provide about the same amount of grip or friction in your hand. I wear a size large in gloves, and both of these grips are just fine for me, but if you have extra large hands or you want something with a little more grip, there are G10 grips that are available, and they're a little bit beefier, a little wider, and provide more friction. If you're not familiar with G10 grips for the P226, I'll put a link in the show notes. You can check it out later. Other than the stipple pattern, you can see that both grips share the same contours and lines. They have the same screw hole pattern and the grips are interchangeable, but they will not work on the tac ops or single action only models. The West German and the Mark 25 shown here are both double action, single action. The Mark 25 has a military standard 1913 rail. Right above the rail, you'll see a UID sticker. I tried scanning it with my iPhone, but nothing happened. Besides the UID decal, one of the more obvious signs that it's a Mark 25 is going to be the engraved anchor on the left side of the slide near the chamber. On the right side of the Mark 25, you'll see that the grip is marked Sig Sauer, which is different from the left side, which is marked P226. And there's no anchor engraving or UID sticker on the right side. The markings on the left side of the West German model read Sig Sauer and Sig Arms Inc., Exeter, New Hampshire. The markings on the right side of the West German model include the serial number on both the frame and the slide P226, made in West Germany, closer to the muzzle end of the slide, and 9mm on the chamber. There's also a small proof mark at the end of the serial number. When looking at the top view of the slide, you can see that different manufacturing methods were used. I can see two subtle angles that point inward towards the front sight post on the West German model, and the Mark 25 is smooth on top of the slide. On the West German model, you can see that there's an additional piece where the hood of the barrel locks up against the slide. Although the slides are a little different, they do share the same cut for the front sight post, and the same goes for the rear sight. They use the exact same sights. Looking at the back of the West German model, I can see that it's a little bit different where the back of the slide meets the back of the frame. There's a small area of the rail channels that's not completely covered by the slide, and the rail channels on the Mark 25 are completely covered by the slide. Looking at the bottom muzzle end of both, you can see that the West German model has proof marks here, and the Mark 25 is completely smooth with no markings, and this is also a better view of the 3-slot rail. The West German and the Mark 25 are the same size, but they would need different holsters just because the Mark 25 has an accessory rail. On my scale, the West German model weighs 31.3 ounces with an empty magazine, and the Mark 25 weighs 31.8 ounces, also with an empty magazine. From left to right, this is the factory magazine that came with the Mark 25. It has a 15-round capacity. This is the magazine that came with my West German model, also 15-round capacity. And this is a Metgar mag with an 18-round capacity. I have one for each of these models, and this is what I would normally keep in it if I'm carrying it. The mag on the left is from the Mark 25, the mag on the right is from the West German model. They're almost the same, but I can see two holes on the West German model. They're in the front, and on the Mark 25 model, I can see that the base plate's just a little bit different. Here's a left side view of the magazines. On the Mark 25, it's marked Sig Sauer P226 9mm, and the left side of the West German magazine is only marked Sig Sauer. Looking at the right side of the magazines, the Mark 25 is marked Made in the USA, and it also has 3 witness holes for the round count. The West German magazine has a small indentation on this side as well as the left side, and it also has much more wear on it. Looking from the top, the magazines are exactly the same. The Metgar magazine is almost the same size as the West German factory magazine and the Mark 25 magazine, but it has a 4th witness hole to show 18 rounds and a slightly larger base plate made from polymer. I tested all 3 of these magazines in both the Mark 25 and the West German model, and I had no malfunctions with any of them. The Mark 25 has an external extractor just like the other modern P226s. And you can see here that the West German has an internal extractor. If you look closely at both muzzles, you can see that the Mark 25 has a chrome-lined barrel. You can also see on the chamber end of this barrel that the Mark 25 is obviously chrome-lined. If you come across a Mark 25 and you see that the barrel looks like this, it doesn't mean it's heavily used. The corrosion-resistant finish that they use in this barrel just looks like this, even if it's only been a couple hundred rounds. Here's another view of the hood area of the chamber. As you can see that the Mark 25 looks like it has several thousand rounds through it. If you didn't know any better, but that's just the way the finish looks. It may be hard to tell from the pictures, but the Mark 25 barrel is kind of rough. It feels like it's almost textured, like if you rub your finger across it, there's some friction. That's just the corrosion resistant finish. And here's a top view of both frames. If you're using a leather holster that's actually made specifically for the P226 with a rail, you may feel a little friction from the rail as it's coming out of the holster. And I use the term specifically made because there are some holsters that are one size fits most. With a one size fits most type holster, you may not feel the friction from the rail when you draw the weapon, but you're going to have a lot of play and the gun's not going to fit properly. If you're using an all Kydex holster, you probably won't feel any friction from the rail when you're drawing, but Kydex is going to scratch up the finish over time. And the West German model doesn't have a rail, nor does it have anything else for leather to get caught up on when you're drawing. I've only used it in a holster that has a leather interior and a Kydex exterior. This West German model here in front of you is over 20 years old, and you can see it looks almost perfect. And that's not from lack of use. I don't carry this gun every day, but I have carried it and still carry it fairly often. If you haven't seen a holster that has a leather interior and a Kydex exterior, check out skullcrush.com when you get a chance. I want to show you what the base plate of the 18-round Metgar magazine looks like sticking out of the P226. It only sticks out about 1/8 of an inch, and I think it looks good. And just for a comparison, here's the Metgar 18-round magazine in the West German model and the standard 15-round magazine in the Mark 25. These are the standard Sig-Lite night sights that come in the Mark 25, and the West German model has R3D night sights by XS Sights. Of course, these aren't the sights that came standard on the West German model. I chose the XS sights because I actually carry the West German model. These sights are very easy for my eyes to pick up quickly. As of the recording of this video, I'm 46 years old and my near vision seems to get a little worse every year, so I'll take any little advantage that I can get. Both of these rear sights have tritium vials. The Sig-Lite night sights on the Mark 25 have large dots, and the XS sights on the West German model has small white dots. The small white dots on the XS rear sight make it almost like it's a blacked out rear sight. That causes my eye to immediately focus on the front sight, and that's where it should be. Blurry rear sight, blurry bullseye, and there should be a sharp focus on the front sight. And this is what I mean. Imagine if you're looking down the sights of the Mark 25 on the right, and then imagine if you're looking down the sights of the West German on the left. Which front sight post do you think your eyes would naturally be drawn to first? If you have really good vision and you can focus on either sight just as easy as the other, I guess it doesn't really matter. It would just come down to a preference thing. But if you have aging eyes like mine, I think that bright orange front sight is completely necessary. I know pictures don't always do justice, but I'm telling you, it's the next best thing to having an actual red dot optic. I bought these sights locally, but if you're interested, I'll put a link in the show notes below. I'm just going to do a quick shooting comparison using Federal HST 124 grain. I'll do 3 5-shot groups on the left with a West German model and 3 5-shot groups on the right with a Mark 25. The top 2 targets will be at 7 yards, the middle will be at 10, and the bottom 2 targets will be at 12 yards. I do realize that watching other people shoot on video is kind of boring, so I'm going to edit this for time's sake. This is wrapping up the first 5 rounds with the West German model at 7 yards. They should all be in the bullseye at that distance. It's really not that far. Okay, that's a pretty good group. That's about what I expected from the West German model. Let's see what I can do with the Mark 25, also at 7 yards. I didn't talk about it earlier, but my West German model has a short reset trigger installed, and this Mark 25 is completely bone stock. The Mark 25 does not come with a short reset trigger, in case you're wondering. I've never had a problem with the standard P226 double action, single action trigger, but I do prefer the SRT if I have the option. I thought about keeping the West German completely stock and not making any modifications, for example, leaving the original old sights on and leaving the original trigger, but for me it's not just a showpiece or museum piece or safe queen or anything like that. I actually carry it, use it, enjoy it, so I figured I'm never going to sell it. So I don't care about resale value. To me it's priceless. I plan on keeping it for a very long time, and when the time comes I'll pass it down to someone in the family. So I figured why not just configure it exactly how I want it. Anyways, back to the Mark 25. That's how I did at 7 yards with the Mark 25. It's a little bit different from the West German group. The shots are a little bit more spread out, but I don't think it's because it's an inferior barrel or the Mark 25 is inferior to the West German at all. I think it's an excellent gun. I think it's just me not being able to focus on that front sight as sharply as I can with the West German because it has that really bright front sight post. Okay, this clip is after shooting the West German and the Mark 25 at 10 yards. Let's take a look at the difference. Okay, there's the group with the West German. It's not too bad. It's about like the same as it was at 7 yards, and Mark 25 is a little bit more spread out. And this clip is after shooting at 12 yards. Let's see how I did. There's the West German on the left, and there's the Mark 25 on the right, and there's the 10-yard group, and there's the 7-yard group. I hope you found this video entertaining. If you did, please hit the like and subscribe button. Thanks for watching.